Elysian Park on the 5 South to the 110 South. That connector with a stalled vehicle loading up the drive here from Los Feliz Boulevard. Long Beach, the 405 South at Cherry. You have a crash in the left lane coming away from the 710. We're busy. West LA, that's flooding, taking up the left lane here, 405 North approaching the 10, causing a busy drive from Howard Hughes Parkway. And flooding on the 57 North before Temple in the right lane. Stay to the left there. Slow and go from Sunset Crossing.
Shop the closeout event at Lowe's. Get up to 35% off select major appliances. Plus, save an extra $100 when you spend $999 or more on all major appliances. Valid 1/4/24 to 1/24/24. Selection varies by location while supplies last. See Lowe's.com for details.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Sunday was a good day for both of LA's NBA teams. The Lakers got back to 500 with a 24-point win over Portland. D'Angelo Russell had a game-high 34 points and 8 assists. LeBron dropped 28. The Lakers play the Clippers Tuesday night. The Clippers are 13 games over 500 after a comeback win over Brooklyn. They ended the game with a 22-0 run. Kawhi Leonard scored 14 of those points in the final 5 minutes, 23 off the bench for Russell Westbrook. The NFL's Final Four is set for next Sunday. Kansas City is at Baltimore for the AFC Championship. 2 former MVP quarterbacks on display in this one, Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Jackson is the favorite to win this year's MVP. Detroit goes to San Francisco to battle for the NFC title. Detroit is the only NFC team that has never played in the Super Bowl. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things. Increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough. 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 Boom!
Now that I got your attention, yeah, hey. How you doing? 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 Come on. Hey, maybe dub, maybe mirror. Hey, come back again. Yeah, hey. Y'all mind walking with us for a second? Talk to him.
Tell me what you see when I pass by. A shadow, a cloud, or a light in the sky. Am I getting it wrong or am I getting it right? Well, all I can take is one step at a time. Look at me, I'm trying every day. I fall down, make mistakes, get back up, try again. Next time that you see me, I'm walking, I'm walking, I'm walking, I'm walking, I'm walking, I'm walking.
I'm Tavis Smiley, and we are delighted to have you hanging out with us today. That first hour with Mark Morial was quite amazing. Fire conversation. I love his insights. 20 years now running the National Urban League, and so he deserves to be celebrated, and I'm grateful that we had a chance to spend an hour with him. In our third and final hour today, we will talk to a couple of people. We'll talk to Nicola Corte, our chief national political affairs analyst, about all these trending political stories. DeSantis is out, and Tim Scott is endorsing Trump. Well, for that matter, so did DeSantis. Isn't that funny? You can call everybody, you can call folk anything and everything but a child of God, and then you get out and you endorse them. I mean, that DeSantis endorsing Trump is just, it's funny on a number of levels, but we'll talk about that. Nikki Haley hoping for an upset tomorrow in New Hampshire. Not going to happen. So Trump will get the nomination to be sure. But we'll talk politics at the top of our third hour. And then on the bottom of our third hour, conversation with Bill Maher of HBO. But in this hour, a conversation right now with Dr. Mario Bouquet about healing generational trauma, illuminating pathways to resilience, and reclaiming our personal narratives in 2024. We are going to talk for the next hour about breaking the cycle with Dr. Mario Bouquet. Dr. Bouquet, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
If I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I'm doing quite well, and delighted to have you on. It occurs to me I should probably start our conversation with this. You heard me say a moment ago I was just talking to Mark Morial, the president of the National Urban League, and we were talking about the ways in which we see America sliding into authoritarianism. So don't get scared. I'm not trying to make you political. I'm just saying that when you consider all that black folk have endured, and you consider that we find ourselves now in this moment in late modernity where there are foes who now are saying publicly that we should never have passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They're now publicly attacking Dr. King. They're now publicly attacking corrective programs like affirmative action. They're now publicly attacking and wiping out DE&I. They're now publicly going after high-ranking black people in academia, in politics, and every other facet of American life. There is a war, one could argue, in real time on black progress. We were just talking about that. So before we get to generational trauma and how we heal that, how do we deal with the trauma in real time on top of all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid question. And to be frank, the field of psychology and any field really is a politicized field, right? So politics are interspersed within everything, including our health and our mental health. And the thing about, the current status of, where we are politically and the anti-blackness that has always been there, right? But is surfacing in a way that feels incredibly violent is that it actually perpetuates the very traumas that we already carry within us as a collective, right? And so the wounds that have been there from the past, from generations past, and the ways in which the individuals that have been a part of our communities and have suffered specific political and just racial terror for a number of generations, all of that gets reignited in the present moment when we fear the possibilities of backtracking and going back into spaces and into political ideologies that can threaten our safety even more so than what it already is.
I am not naive about what drives anti-blackness politically, but let me ask you a question I never asked before. What drives anti-blackness psychologically?
Oh, wow. It's a fear mostly. That specific emotion is very present and prominent. White fear is definitely at the root of anti-blackness, and the fear that there can be black progression. In addition to that, the fear that there can be some sort of dismantling of white power is also, at the core of what we tend to see in these political conversations and even in the practices, ideologies, and even interpersonal interactions that are happening among us that are also kind of feeding that undercurrent of fear.
Our guest in this hour is Dr. Mario Bouquet. She is on ostensibly to talk about how we heal generational trauma and help us illuminate some pathways to resilience and help us, as I said earlier, to reclaim our personal narratives. But I can't get to that until I get through with this. And this is the drama and the trauma that we are dealing with in real time, politically, culturally, economically, socially. Once we finish unpacking that, then we'll talk about how we heal this generational trauma as we start out 2024 and try to maximize this moment. You're listening to Dr. Mario Bouquet right now on Tavis Smiley.
From Lamert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Environmental justice is racial justice.
Environmental justice is social justice.
This is KBLA Talk 1580.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. At this year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen. Plus, a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
City of Los Angeles landlords that own rent-controlled properties, starting February 1st, you'll be able to increase rents by 4% for your rent-controlled properties. An extra 1% per utility, up to 6%, can be added only if you pay the entire gas and electric bill. And don't forget to give your tenant an advance 30-day written notice for rent increases of less than 10%. It is state law. Learn more about the rent increase at housing.lacity.org. That's housing.lacity.org.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Dr. Mario Bouquet as we talk in this hour about efforts to heal the generational trauma that many are still subjected to and trying to navigate through. Before I do that, though, we were trying to lay a floor here for the ways in which we have to navigate anti-blackness in real time. I'm not sure there's an answer here. I'm not even sure it's a legitimate question, but let me ask anyway, Dr. Bouquet, and see what you do with it. Are there ways in which the anti-blackness trauma that we are trying to navigate in real time is worse than, or I mean, I don't like to compare traumas. I'm just trying to get a sense of how we go about healing the trauma from generations ago while we're dealing with it in real time, and how much more difficult the anti-blackness right now makes the healing process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to think about a couple things,
Okay.
right? So one of which is the fact that, of course, our ancestors went through circumstances that are pervasively, and by far, much more terrorizing than some of what we experience in present day,
Mhm.
right? But there's also the globalization of information and the fact that we get exposed to what's happening on a global scale, but primarily within North America around anti-blackness almost on an ongoing basis, which means that we don't really get any respite from it. So that's one aspect of what I'd like for us to consider. But in addition to that, it's important to also take into consideration the compounded effect of trauma through the generations. The fact that it actually starts accumulating in the body with each generation that doesn't get an opportunity or access or perhaps even have the motivation to actually resolve the trauma in that generation when it's handed down, it gets compounded. And so when we're talking about a very layered experience of emotional trauma, we're talking about the possibility that anybody that might have an exposure to anti-Blackness in present day would be experiencing that exposure and the trauma associated with it, but also a lot of the previous traumas that have been compounded within them as well.
I warned you, the question I'm asking now is going to come completely out of left field, but at least I warned you about it. So I forewarned you. And I'm sure
Appreciate that.
yeah, and I'm sure you can handle it. So it's one thing to talk to me, to talk to us in this audience about how we go about navigating anti-Blackness in real time, no matter how traumatizing and terrorizing that might be. Say nothing of healing the generational trauma. But before I get back to that, let me just, again, pivot here. If you were speaking to an audience of our white brothers and sisters about the fear they have, I asked you earlier what psychologically drives anti-Blackness, and the first word out of your mouth was fear. So assume that you're not talking to me and an audience of people of color, but now talking to an audience of white folk about the fear that they have, which psychologically drives their anti-Blackness. What would you be saying to them? How would you be counseling and advising them on how to deal with that fear of us in real time?
Well, the thing about conversations that are racially centered is that when we start having conversations that specifically address the emotion, there is a bit of the guard that is actually brought down, right? A lot of us have conversations around racism and anti-Blackness that's very, very much situated in the context, like the actual issue that we're having a conversation about. And we're not necessarily having a conversation about how a person is feeling, whether they're white or not, how they're feeling in the moments in which they have to explicitly talk about racism and their perpetuation of racism. And so when we can talk about the emotions that they feel, how they're carrying that emotion in their body, the ways that their body is ready to lunge at somebody that doesn't look like them because they perceive them as a threat, it allows them an opportunity to more clearly identify what's going on within them. Forget the external circumstances, right? That's important, and we'll contextualize that. But what's going on within them that's actually making it so that they're not able to really dismantle racism within themselves and the internalized ideas that they have about other people that don't look like them. And believe it or not, like, people tend to be a bit more receptive when we shift into the emotion than when we just talk about explicitly the actual content.
Here, another impossible question, but you're doing fine with all my impossible questions. Let me ask another one. When I see these Karens, these white women all over the internet, always getting in somebody's face, getting in somebody's business, and not just white women, white males as well. And I don't mean to, cast aspersion on the entire white population. I'm talking about those persons who misbehave in this way that we see caught on tape all the time on the internet. When I see them acting out, if I can use that phrase, and as if they are the authority, as if they are the end all be all, as if they are the police of black people. Talk to me about what I'm witnessing when I see these videotapes. What am I witnessing about these persons externally versus internally?
Yeah, externally we're definitely like dealing with a lot of what I think you cover here, right, with a lot of other experts, which is the lack of systemic accountability for how Karens might behave or how people might weaponize their whiteness against black people, right? And so, like, because there isn't that on a more national scale and even global scale, people are going to feel empowered by their own whiteness and feel like they can utilize it and utilize specific tactics to actually further terrorize individuals of color and black people, right? So I think that's, the external piece is, I think, a bit easier to see. But internally, there is this real idea that a lot of white folks that really fit this category of Karen have, that they are indeed in danger. And that's where the fear comes in, right? That they really embody this idea that of the stereotypes that they have internalized around blackness, around the danger of black people, and that further perpetuates their behavior. and it's not contested, and it's why, you know, stereotypes are so dangerous. It's why, you know, they themselves need to be addressed and dismantled, because they perpetuate that fear, but then there's also not the external accountability around these behaviors that is also feeding, you know, how much we're seeing these Karens pop up.
Yep. This is getting good now. I got 3 or 4 things in my head all at the same time. Let me try to get them out as fast as I can before I forget them. Number one, to your point about stereotypes. I'm not naive, and my listening audience is quite brilliant, and so they know what stereotypes are. And here's a question, again, I've never asked before, I think, in my entire career, which is why psychologically these stereotypes of black people persist. And let me just unpack that a bit more. It's one thing for these stereotypes to have been, you know, born decades ago, centuries ago. But one would think, and again, I'm not saying this out of any naivete, but one would think, one certainly could think, that after all the progress that black folk have made, and God knows there's a lot more to do, and the progress that we haven't made is in part because we've been limited in certain spaces, disallowed in certain places, but one can only look at all the progress that black folk have made in this country against all the odds, to see that the stereotypes that they had of us centuries ago don't hold up. And yet, these stereotypes persist. Again, I'm not naive in asking this, but my question is, psychologically, this is your lane, why do you think these stereotypes of black people persist?
Okay, I can appreciate you saying psychologically, right? Because I'm going to go straight there.
Okay.
Because this is such a nuanced question that, you know, can be tackled from many angles. But from a psychological standpoint, and we can like even go directly to the mind, like the actual structure and the mind and how it operates. The mind has been known to be what we call lazy, right? The mind, it operates in mental representations and categories. And those categories, especially if they have been cemented from an early stage of life, and if they have been basically reinforced, those categories persist, even if we're presented with information that actually counters it. And people actually have to go about the process, the very intentional process of learning and unlearning their own mental representations of people in order to actually recreate what they, or at least create, really not recreate, but create a different idea of humans, of the humans that especially don't look like them. So really, when we're talking about like what's happening within the mind is really kind of taking external information and bringing it right back into all those like categories and buckets that we already have existing in our minds.
I mentioned Mark Moyal, who was on this program in our first hour today. He and I were talking about Dr. King at one point. And I made the point to him, and he, of course, knows this well, that King was fond of saying, while he spoke inside of a frame of morality, he was imbued in his work and his witness by this notion of morality, that we are all God's children. But he made the point repeatedly that he understood that we cannot legislate morality. We legislate many things in this country, but we cannot legislate morality. We cannot legislate people's morals, their values, their ethics, their social mores, and how they behave. We cannot legislate morality, which leads me to believe, to ask rather than, again, psychologically, whether or not there is an antidote to, I love your phrase, weaponizing whiteness. Is there any sort of, in the psychological realm, any sort of antidote to weaponizing whiteness?
Well, part of the antidote is really helping white folks to see black folks or other people of color not as a threat, right? So if we're talking about fear being that prominent emotion, and what's the undercurrent of fear is the perception of this person might debunk me, debunk my power, they're a threat to my existence, then we have to start working with that threat response, which is very ingrained. And just the same as like, you know, when we're talking about intergenerational trauma being an experience that is handed down, and that there are aspects of intergenerational trauma that are, in essence, kind of cemented within our nervous system, that our nervous systems tend to be overactive and respond to stimuli that feel similar and familiar. the same goes, for individuals that are white identified and the ways in which that fear response has been there for generations, right? They've actually although it is a manufacturing that has happened like within the white community of that idea of, Black people are dangerous, there's still a perpetuation of that fear response that has been handed down generation to generation. So we have to work with the threat response that's ingrained in them in order to actually help them to understand this is not someone who you should fear, right? We have to kind of like work on erasing that response.
Let me probe that then. Here again, another sophomore question from me, but give me what you can here. So to your point about them being threatened, them white people too often being threatened by Black people in the psychological realm that they are in that allows them to behave that way or misbehave that way in the first place. But here's my question though. So we're all Black. There's a bunch of us here in this country. But these good white folk are not threatened by, say, Barack Obama. They're not threatened by Oprah. They're not threatened by LeBron. They're not threatened by Patrick Mahomes. They're not threatened by Beyonce. I could do this all day long. I'm just pulling names out of the ether. They're not threatened by certain Black folk, but yet these Karens and others are threatened by the everyday Black people they run into. So these persons I see on videotape on the internet all the time, they are no scarier than Beyonce or anybody else I just mentioned. So what is it psychologically that allows them to be threatened by some of us, but not all of us? We're all Black.
I mean, I think you're giving me like basis for a study because I don't necessarily have the exact answer for that apart from the rules around the exception, right? But I think that there's a lot that can be said around, people that we cannot access, people who are venerated at a higher level, that basically, can create a different relationship in the mind. But I don't want to, speak and not have like specific data that I can attest to, being able to corroborate that theory.
No, I appreciate that. I'm just probing here. I mean, again, sometimes there are no brilliant answers to these questions, but it's worth probing anyway, because as I listen to you talk about the ways in which they are fearful, some of them, the ways in which they feel threatened, it is fascinating to me that they are fearful and threatened by some people, but not others. And I just mentioned names that we all know, but we could just pick, everyday people who certain white people do not find threatening and others they do. And I don't mean, confronting a gang of Black folk in an alley at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm just talking about everyday people. You see somebody in the lobby and you clutch your purse and you feel threatened, this, that, and the other. That persists. And again, it takes us full circle back to that conversation about why all these stereotypes about Black people remain despite all the evidence to the contrary, that we have contributed to this country in a variety of ways. I'm thinking of W.B. Du Bois, the great Black scholar who once asked the question, would America have been America without her Negro people? That's Du Bois. Would America have been America without her Negro people? So many ways we have made contributions, and yet people are still threatened, they're still fearful, and these stereotypes persist. Go figure. When we come forward in our conversation with Dr. Mariel Bouquet, we're going to get right into that dialogue now about how we heal all this generational trauma. We've been talking about the stuff that we deal with every day in real time, but we'll talk when we come forward about how we heal generational trauma, how we can illuminate some pathways to resilience this year, and go about the business of reclaiming our personal narratives. All of that when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
It's a Monday, January 22nd. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. It now costs a bit more to send letters in the mail. Over the weekend, the United States Postal Service increased the cost of a first-class Forever U.S. postage stamp from the current 66 cents to 68 cents. The price of domestic postcard stamps also rose from 51 cents to 53 cents, and stamps for international postcards are now up a nickel to $1.55. An amended congressional redistricting map has been approved in Louisiana. Friday, the state legislature passed a new congressional map following a federal judge's directive to add a second majority black district. The map now heads to Governor Jeff Landry's desk for approval, which he'll likely give. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Range Lake roadways, several areas with flooding and several types. Problems at Encino. If you're taking that drive on the 101 West at Haskell, looks like two of the left lanes are blocked with a crash. Busy from around Woodman. Elysian Park on the 5 South to the 110 South. That connector with a stalled vehicle loading up the drive here from Los Feliz Boulevard. Long Beach, the 405 South at Cherry. You have a crash in the left lane coming away from the 710. We're busy. West LA, that's flooding. Taking up the left lane here, 405 North approaching the 10, causing a busy drive from Howard Hughes Parkway. And flooding on the 57 North before Temple in the right lane. Stay to the left there. Slow and go from Sunset Crossing.
Shop the closeout event at Lowe's. Get up to 35% off select major appliances. Plus, save an extra $100 when you spend $999 or more on all major appliances. Valid 1/4/24 to 1/24/24. Selection varies by location while supplies last. See Lowe's.com for details.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Sunday was a good day for both of LA's NBA teams. The Lakers got back to 500 with a 24-point win over Portland. D'Angelo Russell had a game-high 34 points and 8 assists. LeBron dropped 28. The Lakers play the Clippers Tuesday night. The Clippers are 13 games over 500 after a comeback win over Brooklyn. They ended the game with a 22-0 run. Kawhi Leonard scored 14 of those points in the final 5 minutes, 23 off the bench for Russell Westbrook. The NFL's Final Four is set for next Sunday. Kansas City is at Baltimore for the AFC Championship. Two former MVP quarterbacks on display in this one, Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Jackson is the favorite to win this year's MVP. Detroit goes to San Francisco to battle for the NFC title. Detroit is the only NFC team that has never played in the Super Bowl. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Around here, we don't believe in victimhood. We believe in raising our voices, amplifying black voices in the climate conversation. We're KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Shop the closeout event at Lowe's. Get up to 35% off select major appliances. Plus, save an extra $100 when you spend $999 or more on all major appliances. Valid 1/4/24 to 1/24/24. Selection varies by location while supplies last. See Lowe's.com for details.
Jim Gaffigan here with some more Straight Talk. Now you can get a Walmart Plus membership, plus not pay for it, because it's included with Straight Talk wireless plans. You get free delivery with Walmart Plus a Paramount Plus subscription included. Plus, you pay less for gas. That's a lot of pluses.
Only Straight Talk gives you unlimited 5G data and Walmart Plus included on select plans for free.
Straight Talk Wireless, available at Walmart.
Requires service on Gold or Platinum Unlimited. One offer per eligible account. Paramount Plus Essential Plan only. Separate registration required. Additional terms apply.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right. Y'all gotta try that Febreze car. Just right, just right, just right. Yeah. La 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 la. With up to 40 days of consistency on low Febreze car clips right on your vent. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face when it smells just right, just right, just right. Yeah. Breathe happy Febreze. La 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 la.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
I have some very sad news to report, some breaking news, and I hope I can get through this in one piece. The King Center in Atlanta has just announced that Dexter Scott King, the youngest son of Dr. Martin King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, died today at the age of 62. We are told from family members that he died after a battle with prostate cancer. I quote now from his wife, Leah. He transitioned peacefully in his sleep at home with me in Malibu. He gave it everything and battled this terrible disease until the end. As with all the challenges in his life, he faced this hurdle with bravery and might, close quote. That's from Leah Weber King, Dexter's wife. Martin King III and Bernice King reside in Atlanta, their hometown, where they were born and raised. Dexter moved out here to California. Dexter and I were friends, knew each other very well for a lot of years, and I'm stunned because he kept this really quiet. Most of us apparently did not know he was battling prostate cancer, but many years ago he moved here to Malibu, went to Morehouse in Atlanta, and at one point had the job that his sister Bernice now has, which is running the King Center. I was at his inauguration and spoke, in fact, when he was inaugurated as the president of the King Center. Mrs. King, his mother, was stepping aside. She is the person who built the King Center. And I always loved and respected Mrs. King for a lot of reasons, regarded her as a personal friend. But she built that King Center. She took on the task of making sure that there would be an appropriate memorial to her husband in Atlanta. And she went about the business of building that center. And after years of running it and maintaining it as a national memorial, she turned the reins of the King Center over to Dexter. And I was in Atlanta at Ebenezer on the day of his inauguration as the president of the King Center. He did that for a while. And then he eventually transitioned into running the King Estate. So it was Dexter who essentially ran the King Estate. All the children obviously were a part of it. But Dexter took the responsibility of running the King Estate, licensing and all the like that go along with having a father as famous as Martin Luther King Jr. So Dexter essentially ran the estate, and that took him into a number of entertainment circles and other projects. And as such, he moved some years ago here to California, where I sit right now, and made his home in Malibu. And we spent some good time over the years here in California, as we did when he was running the King Center in Atlanta. But he's dead now at the age of 62, having battled prostate cancer, and this breaks your heart in a variety of ways. I should say that there are now 2 kids left. Of course, Dr. King was first to go, assassinated in 1968. We lost Coretta Scott King some years ago, of course, to cancer. We lost Yolanda King, the oldest daughter, died some years ago. And now Dexter. So MLK III and Bernice are the 2 that remain. Dr. King only has 1 grandchild. Martin Luther King III and his wife, Andrea, have a daughter. And so Dr. King has 1 grandchild, and only 1. Dexter never had kids, but It's hard to process his death at the age of 62 from prostate cancer. It just reminds us. Let me get on my soapbox for a minute. You know I'm going there, right? Reminds us as black men. I literally just had my check not long ago. Every one of us has to get checked for prostate cancer. We have to do it when our doctors tell us every so many years. You know how this works. But I find so many men, I've had these conversations countless times in my career, of men who are afraid to get checked, afraid to go see the doctor. If there's something bad, they don't want to know it. I've got men like that, indeed, in my own family. And I don't know the backstory to Dexter's story, his journey with prostate cancer. I just know that too many black men succumb to this disease, and too many of us succumb to this disease because we find out too late. And we find out too late because we are unwilling to get tested and to get the information that we need to live long and productive lives. And so this is a tragedy of major proportion that Dexter is now gone at the age of 62. This story will be developing, I know, in the coming hours and days, and it is often the case, given the time of day that I'm on the air, that these stories tend to break. This is one that I wish I didn't have to share today. I have again had so many great times with Dexter over the years. One of the the irony is I was literally just talking to Dr. Bouquet moments ago about Dr. King, and Mark Morial was on our program in our first hour today. We were talking about Dr. King, and both of us agreed, you know, my sense that Dexter's father is the greatest American this country's ever produced. Who knew that in this conversation, where we referenced his father so many times, we'd have breaking news about the passing at the age of 62 from prostate cancer here in California of Dexter King. It is a sad day for the King family. It's a sad day for Black America. A sad day for all of us who knew Dexter and called him a friend. I was about to say that one of my prized possessions, I've been very fortunate over the years to collect a lot of things. There are a lot of things in my personal collection. I did an exhibit years ago called America I Am, the African-American imprint. Many of you remember that exhibit that toured the country for 4 years, featuring all kinds of artifacts, over 300 artifacts that told the story of the Black contribution to America. I just quoted Du Bois earlier in that question, would America have been America without our Negro people? This exhibit, America I Am, sought to answer that question. And so I was at the middle of, in the center of curating this exhibit, pulling together all of these items that we traveled for 4 years, telling the story of the grand contribution to this country by we Black folk. And so I learned in that moment years ago, curating that exhibit, the value of holding on to things, the value of holding on to these heirlooms, these family treasures that help tell our story. And so I've been collecting things for years, but one of the things that I am proudest of and treasure most is a book called Testament of Hope. It's called Testament of Hope, curated by a brilliant professor named James Washington, who ironically happened to be the best friend of Cornel West. They taught together for years, best friends. So James Washington wrote this book called Testament of Hope, and it is the collected speeches of Dr. King, a book that I go back to time and time and time again in my own work and witness. And that book, Testament of Hope, came out, and everybody wanted to get a copy of it. It was the first book that was a compendium of all of his speeches and articles. Just an amazing text. And the King family presented that book to me as a gift one day, and they all signed it in chronological order. Mrs. King signed first, Yolanda signed second, Martin signed third, Dexter signed fourth, and Bernice signed last. And it's the only book I have that has all the signatures of the King family, and it sits in my office on my bookshelf, and I see it every day. Just one of those many treasures that I have from the King family, and Dexter's signature is affixed thereunto. I'm sad to report that Dexter Scott King, the youngest son of Martin and Coretta, dead today from prostate cancer at the age of 62. More when we come forward.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? this isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. At this year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen. Plus, a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties: classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
He's rooting for everybody black.
Everybody black.
More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
In case you just tuned in, we just broke the news here on this program that Dexter Scott King, the youngest son of Martin and Coretta, has died here in California, in Malibu, at his home, peacefully, we are told, at the age of 62, from prostate cancer. It's a sad day for me personally, and again for all of us who knew and loved Dexter and worked alongside him. We used to tease all the time and laugh all the time about the fact that God at least was fair and just with the King family, because when it comes to that name, that's a heavy name to carry, Martin Luther King Jr. And when he was much younger, we called Martin Marty. You can't call him Marty these days because he wants to be known as Martin, and he should. He's a grown man. We called him Marty back in the day, but Marty got the looks. Marty got the name, rather, MLK III. But Dexter got the looks. When you look in Dexter's face, you see Martin Luther King Jr. all day long. Dexter looked just like his father. Some would argue a more handsome version of his father. But Dexter looked just like his dad. And Marty got the name. And so at least there was some equity in how that worked out. But I want to move now just to get a few comments from Dr. Mayo Bouquet. Dr. Bouquet, I certainly apologize for this conversation sort of going off course with this breaking news, but it's really not that far off course because we're talking before this story broke about Dexter's passing, about generational trauma and how we go about healing that. It occurs to me that one of the traumas that too many black people have to deal with is that we lose loved ones too soon. And I say too soon, recognizing that I'm not God and I have no control over when we go. And none of us are going to get out of here alive. But there is this reality that in our community, either because of violence or prostate cancer or any number of other things, black people die too soon. And that becomes part of the trauma that we deal with, losing those we love so soon. Your thoughts?
I want to thank you. I don't think any apology is needed. This is a moment where there's collective Black grief, just a part of our collective experience. And so, I think also part of what tends to happen for us is that we have to keep moving on and pressing on, despite the fact that we're in a process of grief and grieving our community members. And of course, as a psychologist, I am also very much aware of the fact that your heart might be very heavy in this moment, and I want to honor that for you and for us.
I appreciate that, and I'm gonna let you go now because I don't need to hold you much longer for a story that's taking us in a different direction. But I want to thank you for coming on today. I promise we'll have you back. We laid the foundation for the conversation that I was building on regarding how we heal generational trauma. So I promise we'll get you rebooked on this program, and we will talk about that in the coming days. But for now, Dr. Bouquet, thank you for coming on the program, and we'll do it again somewhere down the road, I promise.
Thank you very much, and take care.
Thank you for your time. When we come forward, a few remaining thoughts about the passing of Dexter Scott King, the youngest son of Martin and Coretta, at the age of 62 today here in Malibu, California.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing Charles Barkley in a pickup game.
We'll take Barkley.
Ha! First pick. Sorry, kids.
Yep, even easier than that. With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, is it even a decision?
Okay, here's the plan. Pass me the ball every time.
This is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One NA, member FDIC.
Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
More honesty than you can handle.
More empowerment than you can imagine.
You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
We thank Dr. Mario Bouquet for being our guest in this hour. I had no idea, of course, that this news was going to break about Dexter Scott King, youngest son of Martin and Coretta, dead at the age of 62 from prostate cancer. Don't know a whole lot now, except that he passed away again at his home here in Malibu. I am just grateful that Mrs. King was not around to have to see this. I miss her terribly. But children should never go before their parents, even when they go this soon. But to know that Yolanda's gone and now Dexter's gone, and there are 2 that remain, MLK III and Bernice King, who runs the King Center. Dr. King and Coretta have one grandchild, one granddaughter who's brilliant in her own right. I just saw her on somebody's show the other day during the King holiday season. She was doing a couple of interviews, and that young girl is coming into her own, and she got it honest. I need to step aside to get myself together for this last hour of this program. Bear with me. We will talk to our national political affairs analyst, Nicola Corte, when we come forward and reprise our conversation with Bill Maher. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Yes, he will.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
It's a Monday, January 22nd. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. It now costs a bit more to send letters in the mail. Over the weekend, the United States Postal Service increased the cost of a first-class forever U.S. postage stamp from the current 60 signal map, following a federal judge's directive to add a second majority black district. The map now heads